Hello to all my wonderful constituents and friends in Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District and across Maryland and across the country who are tuning in for my favorite time of the week, Local Hero, when we get to recognize the people that make life in Maryland's 8th Congressional District so wonderful. And here on this week, after we've just had our Food Systems Resiliency Roundtable with Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts, who's the head of the Congressional Hunger Caucus, I decided that we would bring in Heather Bruskin as our local hero. And Heather coordinates the Montgomery County Food Council. She runs its staff of 11 people. It's 400 plus volunteers. It's board of directors, all of its working groups, all of its relationships with community partners. She's a critical force in terms of promoting food resiliency and food equity in our community in Montgomery County, which of course is one of the three counties part of Maryland's 8th District, Montgomery, Frederick, and Carroll County. So for your amazing work in promoting food resiliency and combating hunger, Heather Bruskin, we recognize you this week as our local hero. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Congressman. It's an incredible honor. My family is so proud to live in your district, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to highlight some of the innovative and collaborative food work happening in our community.
So look, food is complex. In some sense, it's simple. Of course, we get hungry and we want to eat something, but food systems are complex. So tell us about what food systems are and the work that you're doing to make food systems work for all of our people.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So in Montgomery County, as you well know, we're blessed with a robust and diverse food landscape. We've got a third of our land preserved for agricultural activities in a nationally recognized model. We have over 120 food assistance providers. We've got hundreds of farms that produce food and food and beverage entrepreneurs. We've got a growing food scraps recycling industry here, but we also have tremendous inequity, and this harvest and this bounty isn't shared by everybody equally in our community. And despite being on average one of the wealthiest counties in the country, we have over, at this point, 100,000 residents who are at risk for hunger. And that includes over 30,000 children. And our Black and Brown residents are at 5 to 6 times more likely to be experiencing hunger. And so if we truly want transformative change in these systems, addressing these inequities, and also building resilience, sustainability in our food system, we really need to bring everybody to the table and leverage the expertise and the knowledge of all our different partners. And that's really where the Food Council comes in. We connect the expertise of businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, and residents, over 2,000 partners in capacity building initiatives, building the strength of our network, as well as leveraging and connecting community expertise to support policy and advocacy work. So we have different perspectives that are critical and not looking at food as in siloed capacities, but rather looking at how each of these pieces intersect and coming up with collaborative strategies to achieve this vision that we have for our local food system.
And what are the values that unify the different entities that are involved, whether it's the not-for-profits or the restaurants that have gotten involved, the businesses, the schools, and so on?
Mm-hmm. Well, so often when we talk about food, we'll talk about hunger, or we'll talk about local food production, or talk about economic opportunity or education. But we really try to think about food as a system instead. And hopefully it's a circular system where at the end of, we've got the production, the distribution, the consumption of food, and then ultimately, hopefully taking the energy and the nutrients from our food scraps and recycling that to improve soil health and grow more food. But it's truly critical to have policies that leverage each of those different aspects to ensure that all residents have access to sufficient, culturally appropriate, nutritious food. And so I think a great example of that is the Farm to Food Bank program that came out of the COVID response. I have the honor of serving as the co-lead of Montgomery County's Food Security Task Force, which is an initiative Montgomery County government in partnership with their Health and Human Services and Emergency Management that has connected over $28 million to address the 50% rise in hunger in Montgomery County during the pandemic. And federal resources and policies and programs have been absolutely critical to so much of those initiatives. And so just want to say thank you to you and your colleagues for making those resources available. But the Farm to Food Bank program makes investments through grants, and this is an initiative jointly with the Office of Agriculture, Manna Food Center, and the Food Council, makes investments in our local farms to build their capacity to grow more food, to extend their growing season, to produce more food that's local, nutritious, that reflects the cultural diversity of our local population. And then this food that's grown is then purchased at a fair market rate from these farms to then be distributed to local residents through our food assistance network. And so we can build the resilience of our community. Only 1% of what we eat here in Montgomery County is actually grown here or produced here. So we can grow more food to be more prepared for the next crisis, whether it's another pandemic or climate change, but then also make sure that we have in the short term enough food for all of our residents to eat and have what they need.
Well, look, I'm so psyched that you're doing this because it is complex for the reasons you say. I mean, we have a thriving agriculture sector up at the Ag Reserve. I even have a few farms in the Montgomery County portion of my district. I've got a ton of farms in Frederick County and in Carroll County, but still most of the food is coming from other places. And you're involved in the process of making sure that ultimately everybody's going to get the food that they need, that there is food equity and food security for the whole population. Just say one word more, if you would, about COVID-19 and the kind of stresses that that's created for us, and then what we've learned from it.
Absolutely. So as I shared before, pre-pandemic, we had about 70,000 residents who were estimated at risk for food insecurity. And in March of 2020, that number rose to over 100,000 people. And that really just laid bare a lot of the systemic inequities and the fragility of our local food system. And when the years prior to COVID, we had been really investing in network building. So we were able to actually quickly mobilize a food security response to meet the needs of these residents. And I think my lesson learned is how everybody has a role to play in supporting our community. And I've just been regularly and consistently inspired by the number of community leaders and advocates who are passionate about stepping in to play a role. So pre-COVID, we had about 75 food assistance providers. About half of them are faith-based organizations that were providing food assistance in our community. And just like we had a 50% increase in the number of people who are experiencing hunger, we had a 50% increase in the number of organizations that are doing that critical work to distribute food, especially making sure that we were reaching hard to connect with populations that maybe were experiencing food insecurity for the first time. And so we also have in Montgomery County, we realize so many residents who are living just on the brink of food insecurity. With the high cost of living that we have here, we have so many residents who make too much to be eligible for benefits like SNAP and WIC, but don't make nearly enough to make ends meet and cover all their costs. And so when there are big economic changes, like happened because of the pandemic, that shifts so many people into a much more challenging place in terms of accessing sufficient food for their families. So one of the things that we've been looking at through the pandemic response is how can we be stronger moving forward? And so part of that, like we've already talked about, is increasing local food production. Our farmers are as dedicated to fighting hunger as everybody else who works in the food security space. And they have been incredibly excited to play a role in growing more food to feed their neighbors, as well as creating jobs, both on farms as well as through our packaged food and beverage industry. So many of the products that are produced here in Montgomery County in kitchens and in production facilities reflect the cultural diversity of our population. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about food is that it's not just a social service issue, but it's also an opportunity for workforce development and for strengthening our community as a whole.
Yeah, well, look, that's such an awesome perspective and a very holistic approach that you've got to dealing with the problem, and it's uplifting. Thank you for the appeal to each and every one of us to think about food security and anti-hunger as being part of our mission, whether we're going to get involved with one of the local hunger groups like the MANA, or this wonderful new group that we've been working with called Tommy's Pantry, or at the broader structural level. And so we want to salute you and all of your colleagues at the Montgomery County Food Council, the staff and the volunteers and the members of the board for what you've been doing to put Montgomery County really in the forefront of efforts at making food security a central value for us. So for all these reasons and more, you are our local hero. Thank you, Heather Bruskin, for everything you do every day. And you get the final word if there's anything else you want to say to people.
Well, thank you so much for your incredible leadership and partnership, and just underscoring how the way we develop policies going forward to promote the health and the economic opportunity for all of our residents is really critical. And all of us as residents have a voice in prioritizing that and centering that vision, and the way we engage with our elected officials, as well as the way we uplift the voices of our neighbors. And so I encourage everybody to take a moment, as you shared, to learn about the incredible organizations throughout our county and in neighboring communities as well. We work really closely with the Frederick County Food Council, but learning about all of the resources that are available in your community and raising the visibility of these issues and awareness in your own personal networks, so that we can increase resources that are available and make sure everybody is getting connected to the resources that they need.
That's great. Okay, well, that's Heather Bruskin, our local hero from the Montgomery County Food Council. Thank you for everything you do, Heather.
Thank you so much.